Hey everyone, Hamza Zaveri here from the AI Furnace. Today we have with us Brian Benedict, co-founder of Arcee AI. Arcee is a small language model company that helps enterprises develop and deploy their own small language models based on domain-specific data. So it's great to have you here, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So in terms of before we jump into the main questions, I'd love to go into a quick fire round just to, do something more fun. So before, I spoke to Kirk McKeown, who is the founder of Carbonark, which is another leading AI company that's doing really well. And he told me that you guys knew each other from childhood in Boston. How did that happen? Like, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So when I was in fourth grade, I moved, my family, we moved from one side of the town we lived in to the other, and I became pretty much neighbors with Kirk. And so just getting to know Kirk, we went to the same school. He was a year older than me in elementary school, but I played a lot of street hockey with him and his kind of like a gang of friends, so to speak. And I was by far the worst street hockey player out of everybody there. I played soccer growing up and tennis, and so I was completely out of my comfort zone. All of these other kids had played hockey like their whole life, so I looked like the absolute complete runt of the mill out there. But they embraced me and let me join in on the fun with them, and it was great. Yeah, so Kirk and I reconnected. Obviously years later when I heard about his company and I told him what we were up to, and we've been partners ever since on a bunch of different things. So yeah, his company's great. Yeah,
that's awesome. No, it's good to hear you were getting out of your comfort zone from such a young age. I'm sure it helped in the startup world.
Oh yeah.
And so are you still based in Boston right now, or are you in San Francisco?
Yeah, so in Boston most of the time, but back and forth to SF quite a bit, just given one of our big main hubs is out there. A lot of our prospects, clients, as well as our employees are there. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I don't envy you being in Boston right now. The winter time is pretty harsh there, right?
It's pretty brutal. I think we are at 14 degrees last time I checked, Fahrenheit. So wow. It's rough, but yeah, heading to SF next week. So hopefully it's gonna be warmer out there.
Yeah, a good change. Okay, so moving on with the quick fire round. Another question I really like to ask founders is, if you could invest in any AI startup at the moment, which one would it be?
Oof, that's a tough one. There's so many good ones. I'm very partial to, if I'm an investor, I like to invest in A-round companies, a little bit more kind of throughput to figure out where they are versus seed. So I guess I'll go with a couple of my favorite A-round companies. Sybil AI, I'm not sure if you've heard of it. They are pretty much an AI voice transcription solution software. It's a fantastic tool. I use it. I've used it like wherever I go. And they've been around for a little while. That's a great one. I'm also kind of keen on Fixer AI. I'm not sure if you heard of those guys, but a company that's doing more of an AI assistant for email. Think of it almost like Superhuman on steroids. I feel like that's another company, that's another A-round one that's doing well as well. So those would be my top two.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll check those out. I haven't heard of the last one, so that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So
they're heating up big time.
Yeah, are you a Superhuman user, by the way?
I am not a Superhuman user, no. So I know some people are all about inbox zero. That is not my take.
Yeah,
and out versus close everything out myself. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm the same.
It would be an ideal state though to get there. I guess that would be pretty euphoric.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I haven't used Superhuman, but I'll definitely check out the AI version of it as well. It sounds like a cool product. So getting into the main questions now. So you started Arcee AI, which builds small language models. We've all heard of large language models such as GPT and Claude. So starting off very simply, what are small language models?
Sure. Well, small language models are very comparative to a large language model. Just overall, the parameter size of the model is just less. There's a misconception in market that if the model is small, then it can only really handle one specific domain or task. And that's very untrue, right? Just because a model has smaller parameter size does not mean it actually is lesser of a model. A lot of our models that we build, which are SLMs, We do very, specific general purpose models that can be, used across any different task, very similar to like a large language model that you would use like an OpenAI or an Anthropic. It just has less parameters. It doesn't mean it can actually do less. It still has reasoning capabilities. It can do instruction following extremely well. It can do multi-language. So really, the concept of it really came from our early days at Hugging Face. Mark and I were both there at the early days. That's where I met him. Mark's our CEO. And the two of us saw large language models fail in production systems often. And they failed because of a few different reasons. One of the main reasons was, latency issues. One of the main reasons were cost and downtime. And then, of course, the fact that if you're building models for, specific departments within an organization, you do not need a lot of this excess data that is just pretty much costing you money and taking up space. And so really the premise was to build small language models as a way to enable enterprises to be able to do what they needed to do with models, but not have to pay the exorbitant fees and costs that are associated with the LLMs.
Okay, that's great. And so the less cost on compute is a big benefit as part of small language models, and like the lower size of the parameters. Is there also an element of higher accuracy that smaller language models can give compared to large ones?
Absolutely. We see it all the time because they're more fixed on very specific tasks or different things. So, if you're building a model just around code gen versus a, general purpose model that has code gen in it, we typically see some very steep accuracy depictions. We just ran, one of our clients just, ran a big kind of like comparable against, it was blinded, by the way, which I loved. They blinded this to their end users to see which models they actually liked using the best, and they put it off their own interface, so they couldn't tell if it was Anthropic versus ours versus others. And what they had found was that like over 65% of their employees were using our model the most, which shows that again, sometimes the naming convention kind of skews the results more than anything else.
That's cool. Yeah, I love those blind experiments. I think they can uncover a lot of good insights.
Oh yeah.
It's also good to see that you managed, in terms of figuring out this problem and knowing that this is something that you wanted to tackle, that came from an insight that you developed at Hugging Face. I think those are like amazing startup journeys where someone sees a problem in the industry before they start their own company, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So and then when you found that problem at Hugging Face and you decided that, okay, I want to pursue helping companies to solve this problem with small language models, how did you find your co-founders? How did that journey begin?
Yeah, so Mark and I had been in touch, ever since when he left Hugging Face, and we always were kind of ruminating and talking about, when we're going to do this. And then, GPT-4 hit in the December prior to us starting the company, and we were like, oh, this is the moment, because this is widespread adoption of large language models. This is going to get pretty much people off their butts and saying that they have to now take an action to do something. And we saw it quite clearly when we started the company in June of that year, where companies were grappling with, I have to get something out today, but I also want to make sure that it follows suit of what I need, and which is, for a lot of these large enterprises, is they had data, they wanted to bring data into these models, and you can't do that with closed source models. So how do you do that? And they also didn't want that data to leave. They didn't want that data to become part of any big closed source model provider. So they really wanted to build something a little bit more tailored to their own brand, tailored to their voice, tailored to their own data. And they wanted it to live in their own four walls. And so that's really where, we started our journey at Arcee, which was on domain specific models within customers' VPCs.
Sure. And just to dig further into that, are small language models that you're working with, are they based on open source models, or they're models that clients can develop themselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when we started our journey, we started using like open source models like Mistral 7B, Zephyr. Like, this is like how far I'm going back here, right? Like, these sound ancient compared to where we are today. Yeah. And we were merging, we were using some techniques around post-training called model merging, which we invented and started this whole merging techniques. We'd merge the data of the companies into these models. As we've continually built more and more models for clients, we started building our own. So we started building our own models that are based off like Llama or Quinn based models. We're doing some different, post-training techniques, making it more our own and customizing and tailoring these models for different tasks and different purposes. So we've gone from, hey, we're just building custom models for clients, to now we're building more general purpose models around specific domains like code generation, speech to text and others that people can use off the shelf. And of course, since these models are open source, you can merge your own data into these models too. So we have a lot of flexibility with our clients around doing that work now.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because coming from, I was a lawyer in a previous life, and I know how important, based on the network that I have and the conversations I'm having with law firms and lawyers adopting AI, privacy and of course accuracy is a big issue. And have you seen much segue into like legal when it comes to small language models?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we definitely see that. I mean, legal is a very big area, whether it be within a big corporate environment or just even like law firms that we work with. So we see a lot of that, of them wanting that data. Again, they have a lot of data. They want to use that data as part of the model builds and processes, especially when it comes to specific IP tasks and different aspects of that, where they've kind of built their own proprietary summarizations and toolings in which on their side. So general purpose models just aren't equipped to handle that type of environment and work. And the other side is the only way you knowledge inject would be using RAG. And a lot of times RAG can be very expensive. So, legal teams and others really would like to do something more cost effective with their own data versus always having to, depend on those RAG type of situations.
Yeah. Okay. And if you do start adopting small language models, does that kind of discount the need for using RAG from your experience?
It does, because a lot of times, right, like unless you have like a super real-time use case where you need real-time information, RAG is a great solution. But as you think about a lot of the situations out there, if you are able to kind of like continually do pre-training of data in a small model that's open, you can continually bring in that data on a constant basis and not have to, use RAG every single time. And your cost is much less, right? I was actually on a panel with one of the big vector database companies. The CIO, the COO actually literally said in this panel, I think RAG is going to be dead in a year. Now, this is a vector database company that is doing a lot of work within this work. So I thought that was extremely telling that they feel that way.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. And so going back to the story of Arcee AI as well, what were the biggest challenges you faced in the first year of starting the company?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first year, right? I mean, I guess going back into RAG. I mean, the summer of 2023, it was all about RAG. So everyone was talking RAG. We saw companies coming out like Contextual, which was Dowie's company, another Hugging Face former employee and stuff. So we saw like people really kind of like gravitating to RAG applications. And here we were sitting there talking about SLMs, and everyone was asking us, what's an SLM? What does that even mean? Right? I thought we want big models. Why would we even talk about small? So we were really kind of like, going against the grain. Right. And so like our first clients, ironically, were also just, those kind of early adopters that went against the grain, and they believed in our mission. And when we talked to people and we told them about, why small language models and why we think starting with something small with your data in your environment, everyone kind of nodded their head and said, yeah, that makes total sense. Why is no one else doing this? And it was just such a newer concept back then. But really, we've grown from, I think, especially after GPT-4 hit, and then what you saw was a massive drop in companies building large language models. And we started seeing all the minis come out, all the other SLMs from the hyperscalers and other types of companies. Then we really started seeing, more adoption of this. We started seeing more companies. Our inbound just blew up. We had more companies reach out to us than ever, asking like, what made our SLMs better? How do we build an SLM like this? Like, your models are great. And so we started just kind of steamrolling off of that fact, where I'd say the first, probably like 5 to 6 months, we were really looking for very specific ICPs that believed in our work, and going after really big companies that had obviously like constraints around their data to use other stuff. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a challenge that we're seeing with a lot of AI companies that are starting in new areas
Yep.
or making headway in new kind of niches where you have to educate the market, but it's good to see that you found some initial early adopters and ICPs that were already looking into it, and then the market kind of started getting more demanding at that afterwards at that point. And like another, for the benefit of those at the early stages of building companies, how did you get your first customer? I love asking this question.
Yeah, I mean, the best first customers, and I've been, I'd say like super early on at companies, about 3 or 4 different times, including here, where your best companies, your best first customers are ones in which you have some kind of relationship before, because I mean there's some trust built there, right? And I think it's always like looking at the pool of companies that you have in your network of people, obviously makes it easier. So ironically, our first customer was actually a company called Active Loop. They're on the database side. I had done some consulting for them in previous lives, and Mark had done some as well. So we both knew the founder really well. And they had some very specific needs around building an SLM. And so, we said, hey, we think we can build this for you. We give us a shot. And he obviously knew the two of us pretty well. And he said, sure, let's go, let's do it. And so, we set something up and got going with him. And it was great because, like anything else, like you need a lot of reps in any job to like get better at it. And it's the same thing with, building a new product and testing it. So we had this concept down, but until we actually had data to run against it and see if it really worked and how it would, kind of perform, we really didn't know. And so, it worked really well. He was actually an advocate for us and, really helpful in terms of the work that we did as we continued to grow and stuff like that. So it actually worked out to be really great.
Yeah, no, it's so true in terms of like the experiences that I've had and the stories that I've seen with other founders who who move to the next levels. Definitely drawing on your relationships and network to get the first customers, people that know you and are willing to support you. That is always like an amazing way to start. But yeah, it's cool to know. And in terms of like, I know you discussed model merging at the beginning of Arcee's journey, and then now developing out your own models essentially. What are the like technological kind of advancements or differentiation? Do you think that the developing out your own models helps to differentiate Arcee in a strong way?
We do. So we wanted to showcase to the market that our models were great. And if you're building models for every client and the worst of the world can't see them, right? I can't log somebody into Active Loop's model and say, hey, great, let's query against it and show you how great this is, or any of our clients that are on our website. We just can't obviously do that. So we wanted to build these models as a way to showcase to the world and open source them to show like our training techniques are superior. And so when we had launched our 8B, our 14B, our 72B models on Hugging Face, at the time when they first launched, they were all #1 in their respective classes. Now, obviously that changes over time as models are getting better every day. But knowing that, as a 30-person company, our models were weighing in that high, showcase to people that, wow, like what they're building is really good, high quality models. Like they wouldn't be able to benchmark this high within that, right? So knowing that companies are going to think about whether it be adding their data, adding their workflows to our models as they're now building out their frameworks for different things, they have trust that these models are really good. They can benchmark these models. They can test. I mean, we sometimes walk into meetings and companies like, yeah, we already tested your models. We know they're great, which is why why we reached out. So it ended up being a really strong mechanism and signal to the market that, this company is really, doing things the right way. They're really building high quality models, and here's a way for you to test them.
Awesome. Okay. And when you're developing out those models, is it very costly to do the compute side of developing your own models, or does it differ from large language model development because it's small language models?
It differs a lot. And, when our investors see our balance sheet, they're always surprised at how little our compute costs are. And they're asking us like, why aren't you spending more? It's like, we don't need to. We're building models very efficiently. We don't need to spend more on compute. And that's really the magic of this, right? When most companies building models have to spend a lot to make very little. And our model is completely reverse to that effect, where we're able to kind of utilize small models, make very strategic investments, but then see a big time monetization and return on those. Right, we've built like the #1 model in Arabic about 5 to 6 months ago. We signed about 4 different clients up just within that first model build within the first month or so. So being able to can strategically build these different layers of models and then add more clients to them on a consistent basis just enables us to grow much faster.
That's great. It's great to know that, you can develop models without having to shell out a lot of capital, depending on the size, right?
Absolutely.
That's great. So now that we've covered the foundations, I think it's a perfect time to jump into the demo. Can you walk us through the platform and technology?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, this is just, a lot of the stuff that we do is around, workflows and generation. I'm going to just, for the sake of time today, just take you guys through something really quick, which is just a look at some of our models, which you can easily get to a bunch of these off of Hugging Face. But we've set up a kind of a model router from a bunch of different models that we have on like coding and more reasoning tasks like Maestro to Virtuoso, which is pretty much our general purpose model that we've built different versions of it, with like small, medium, and large. And you might say, well, why do you have different versions of the same model? Well, we have some clients that really need the bigger perimeter size for more beefy type of work that they're doing, like a 72B. Then we have some clients that need something smaller because they want to keep their costs down, and 2, they don't need as much. So we built different size models for, just different overall just schematics of things. So I'm going to just refresh my screen real quick just so I can get in and show you something pretty nifty here. Here we go. And so let me just quickly, I guess, say like, hey, write me a podcast script for a generative AI founder showcasing AI agents. It's a pretty hot topic nowadays. So, you can see kind of like how quickly this can generate like an entire script. This is going through like, hey, name, founder, and going through an entire script that it's generating across the entire thing. So we have different context length windows too as well. So depending on, what type of context length you're looking for, like Caller is one of our smaller ones, but I can then go to like a Virtuoso large and I can ask it something a little bit different, like, generate me a pie game code. And so I can then go and generate code right off of it on Virtuoso large and put kind of like all the different aspects of stuff. So, just a quick demo, but showcases, the power of what Arcee can do, in terms of like any different model. You can edit these, copy these, tag the responses of these. And the great part about these types of solutions is they can live either within Arcee Cloud if you want to use our models and our scripting and our work, or you can actually have them go and use these all within your own VPC, right? So it's chat interfaced. It's also API driven. There's plenty of ways to get access to our models to utilize across the board.
That's awesome. And when it comes to choosing between like the size of the models, what is that based on? Is it the power and accuracy of the output?
Yeah. So, right now it's, you manually can select those different things. We're actually building into the product today, routing capabilities. So it would route between any of these models based on the queries that you ask. So it will pick the actual model that is best suited for the question that you ask.
Okay, awesome. And how good does the domain data need to be? Does it need to be structured and labeled before it goes into the platform?
It doesn't. This is like one of the things we hear from clients often is we just need the data unstructured text. And so we can either go in and make it into a flat file and do that for them, or if they have the ability to do it, that's totally fine themselves. But yeah, it doesn't have to have some specific formatting or anything like that for it to really work as well. So yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. Thanks for showing the demo.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
Okay. So having gone through the demo, I really want to touch on the intersection of small language models and AI agents. As you rightly said, that's a hot topic at the moment. A lot of industries are looking at adopting AI agents for specific tasks. And when thinking about developing AI agents, I guess there's a few things, the agent architecture, the system prompt and prompt engineering, but it's also a big part of it is the underlying model that you're developing the agent on. Have you at Arcee tested like the power of AI agents based on small language versus large language models? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the product that we're releasing actually beginning of February is called Orchestra, and it's pretty much taking our small language models and adding agentic AI to it to do workflows. What you see today in the world, and I'm sure you're seeing it now, is there's a lot of frameworks out there, a lot of companies like LandGraph and Crew, a lot of frameworks that are out there, which you then have to go and attach an OpenAI model, a Claude model, all these models to these different frameworks to get them to work. That stitching is not something that's very easy to do. That stitching doesn't really work very well in production. There's degradation around the model. There's degradation as you kind of do this work. So our system that is being built right now is going to be the first of its kind of model and routing capabilities all attached to one agentic workflow. So you can literally have any workflow attached to any different model that we've already have built, no code needed, no adaptation needed, and then you can just fly and start building. So, it's been a journey on the build on this. We've taken us about a couple months to kind of like finalize a lot of it. And a lot of it really has to do with, not really the back end, but the front end. We want to make the UI very easy and intuitive for companies to be able to use and kind of build workflows on their own. And so, that's what we've been working on. We've seen some significant result differences of using SLMs with workflows as well versus general purpose models, especially on tasks that, people are trying to perform around code and around even like marketing campaigns and even like different knowledge graphs. So we're excited to kind of see how the world reacts to this new product offering that we're putting out.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that would be very powerful, especially if you're doing a multi-agent system where you need a bunch of agents doing very specific tasks to make up an overall, like taking over a bigger challenge. And maybe those tasks might need specific domain expertise and data to make them even stronger. So I think, I'm sure that will be a very powerful thing to take off, hopefully.
Yeah, our clients requested it from us, and so we were like, why not just build this out as a product set for the world? Because we hear a lot of companies like, hey, chatbot interfaces are great, but we need more workflow automational use case and tasks that we have. And so we obviously wanted to continue to move at the pace of AI today, which is, every week you're behind. So
yeah, for sure. That's awesome. And another kind of theme that I talk to like my founder friends about quite a bit is horizontal versus like vertical products and approaches to tackling a market. What were your thoughts on Arcee from the early stages and my research? Is it still a horizontal company in that there's no specific niche, but it's trying to like help a wide variety of industries tackle a general problem?
Yeah, it is. And for better or for worse, it's kind of like that's been our mission and the way in which we've developed the company. And you see a lot of verticalized solutions getting a lot of play today of just some heavy growth. And I think they're doing some great, phenomenal things. We kind of look at ourselves as, just a little bit of a different beast. We think a lot of the work that we're doing on the horizontal side is going to manifest itself into, many different broad areas. Like we have clients right now that range from startups to education, to tech companies, to big banks, to big healthcare providers. And, our product works in all of those cases. So yeah, do we have a focus from an ICP perspective of what groups that we go after more than others? Of course, we can't have, a rep going after each individual vertical that we work in, but it's not to say that if they come in, we don't have the expertise to kind of, build and do what it is, just because our solution is that mainstream and it's easy to work against. So.
Yeah, no. And I think this is one of those areas where, it makes sense to have a horizontal play as well, because there's going to be so much demand from different industries anyway. And I think it's kind of like an infrastructure play, right? It is infrastructure where it makes more sense actually sometimes to do horizontal there. So just the last question before we wrap up. When thinking about the future, there are a few ways that it could go as to whether enterprises will be powered by small language models or large language models or both. What do you see as the future of language models in general?
I mean, my future, like, I guess really in the distant future, I guess, is I think every single human will have their own personal SLM, right? I think there's enough data that's going to be, derived out of a person, whether it's their social posts, whether it's their, their watch frequency of, their overall health metrics, everything. I think everyone should have their own SLM that's really attached to you, akin to you, knows you, right? Is that personal assistant plus for all aspects of your life. And so when I think of that, this is where it's like, just knowing like knowing me, knowing someone personally. I just don't know if general models can ever get to that level of detail. And that's where I feel skeptical of some of the AGI stuff that comes out there, because I think there's just so much missing and nuanced. And, over time, you can look historically at data, but people change, right? You look at the generations that are coming up today. Kids today are very different than how you and I were probably kids, and their wants and their needs and their adaptation to stuff. So to me, I feel like, there's always going to be a place for large language models. I think it's kind of like quantum computing. There's just needs for solving very big problems that a small model just doesn't have the size parameters to do, at least today. But I still think, the majority of the work can get done smaller. I think it can get done smaller for a number of reasons, not just about hallucinations and tasks, but also about, carbon footprint and emissions, right? I mean, when you start thinking about if I hit OpenAI or Anthropic for every question I have versus a model that's, a 1/100th of its size, and I'm getting a similar answer, what's better for all of us, right? Whether that's, our models or even other small models, I feel like they should be just more prevalent in organizations, and I feel like they're starting to become it. So it's happening. It's just not happening as fast as we all like it.
Yeah, no, I love that take, especially around everyone having their own personal AI assistants, which I also believe in. I think, in that world, definitely you'd need to make the compute efficient enough and things to be run on device, right? So I do agree that small language models will be very interesting as we reach that future.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. To wrap up, if people want to reach you after listening to the podcast, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, good question, man. I'm definitely I'm out and about on LinkedIn, of course, but hit me on email as well. Just my last name. It's Benedict at Arcee.ai. Happy to chat. Look forward to more fun conversations.
Awesome. Okay, excellent. So thank you so much, Brian Benedict, for joining us on the AI Hot 100 podcast today and for sharing with the AI Furnace community. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me.